The clock in the living room ticked soft, deliberate, the kind of sound that only lives inside silence. Outside, the last breath of daylight slipped behind the rooftops, staining the kitchen walls gold for a fleeting second before surrendering to gray. I stood before the table, the salmon still glistening under the warm light. Everything was perfect, too perfect the way I used to think love should be. The air smelled of herbs and lemon, but instead of comfort, it brought a strange ache, like nostalgia you can't swallow. It was 6:30. Dinner was ready, and Nathan was late. Again. He always promised he'd be home by 7, and I foolishly, faithfully always believed him. That was my first mistake. Not believing him once, but believing still. The phone buzzed on the counter. One new message. "Hey, babe, don't wait up. The family's heading to Palm Springs for the weekend. I'll call you later." No emoji. No explanation. No wish you were here. The word family sliced clean, not sharp enough to bleed, just deep enough to remind me what I no longer was. The certificate still called me his wife, but the world had quietly edited me out. My gaze returned to the table, 4 plates, 2 wine glasses, candles trembling in their holders. I had prepared a dinner for 2, pretending we still existed in the same life. But the truth had been cooling on that table for months, a slow rot disguised as routine. The silence thickened until it felt alive, pressing against my chest. I sat down across from the empty chair, the ghost of him flickering there, laughing, talking about his cases, his clients, his victories. Victories that no longer needed my applause. Sometimes I wondered if love doesn't die, but simply dries like a spill left unattended, fading until there's nothing left to wipe away. The phone lit up again. This time, a photo in the family group chat. Nathan, smiling wide, sun spilling over his shoulders. His parents. His sister. Her kids. Palm trees. A glittering pool. A sky too blue to be honest. A perfect picture and not a single space left for me. I scrolled. Another picture. Another caption. Laughter frozen in pixels. Not a single tag. Not a single mention of me. I was his wife in name, on paper but not in presence. I closed the phone and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at me had the same eyes, the same hair, the same face, but her gaze was hollow, like she had been waiting at the same station for a train that would never come. I tried to remember the last time Nathan looked at me, really looked. Not out of duty, not with pity, just saw me. I couldn't. Instead, I remembered his tone that morning. "Elena, don't forget to water the plants. And oh, buy something nice for my mom's birthday. She likes those pearls from the boutique. No thank you. No, I love you." Only instructions. Love, it seemed, had turned into a checklist, and I was just another task waiting to be completed. The candles on the table burned low. The food grew cold. I took a bite of the salmon just to feel something, but it tasted like ashes. I set the fork down gently. The sound of metal against porcelain echoed in the room, sharp and final. This house used to be warm, full of laughter, plans, soft music. Now it was a museum of silence, where even the walls seemed to whisper, "He doesn't love you anymore." I got up and began clearing the table. Each dish felt heavier than it should, like the weight of every broken promise was resting inside it. The glasses clinked softly, and I thought, this is what dying slowly must sound like. I walked to the sink, washed each plate under running water, watching the soap bubbles vanish one by one. The smallest ones burst silently, a quiet death, like hope dissolving in air. In the reflection of the faucet, I saw the faint outline of my wedding ring. For a moment, I wondered what would happen if I took it off. Would I feel lighter, or would I feel nothing at all? I didn't take it off, not yet. Cowardice wears many forms. Mine wore gold. The night deepened. The street outside was quiet, only the hum of distant cars, the occasional bark of a dog. I sat on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling aimlessly through old photos. There we were, smiling at the beach, at his graduation, at our wedding. He had his arm around me in every shot, but now I could see at the small distance between us. A gap I had ignored, telling myself it was just the camera angle. I used to believe marriage was about compromise, about patience, about waiting. But now I wondered, what if waiting was just a polite word for dying inside slowly? The clock struck 9. He hadn't called. I didn't expect him to. I turned off my phone, placed it face down on the table, and leaned back. The wine warmed my throat, but my heart was cold. Memories began to flood in, uninvited. The first time we met, he had dropped his case files, and I helped him pick them up. The first time he smiled at me, I thought I saw kindness. Now I realized maybe it was charm, not love. Charm is dangerous. It looks like light, but it burns like fire once you get too close. I don't know how long I sat there, staring into nothing. The city outside moved on, but inside this house, time stopped. At some point, I got up and walked to the dining table again. The candle had melted down to a small puddle of wax. I reached out and touched it, still warm. Barely. Still warm, I whispered to myself, like the last trace of love, fading but not gone. And then I laughed quietly, bitterly. What a cruel thing hope can be. When I carried the plates to the sink, one slipped from my hand. It hit the floor, and for the first time that evening there was sound. A sharp, shattering sound that cut through the silence like a scream. I froze. Shards of porcelain scattered across the tiles, reflecting fragments of my face. There it was, the metaphor I had been avoiding all night. Something beautiful, once whole, now broken. And no matter how carefully I tried, it could never be put back together the same way. The sound lingered in my ears long after the echo faded. I knelt down, picking up the pieces one by one. A small cut bloomed on my finger, bright red against the white shards. It didn't hurt. It almost felt honest. The first real feeling in weeks. Blood on porcelain, love on paper. Both fragile, both easily destroyed. I rinsed my hand, wrapped it in a towel, and leaned against the counter. The house felt different now, as if the silence had shifted. Less suffocating, more like truth. I went to the window. The night sky hung heavy over the city, stars hidden behind clouds. Somewhere, miles away, Nathan was probably laughing, drinking, pretending his life was perfect. Maybe it was. Maybe I was the only one living inside a ghost. I pressed my palm against the glass, cold and smooth, and whispered to my reflection, "You did everything right. You loved, you waited, you believed." The reflection didn't answer, but her eyes glimmered, not with tears, but with something else. A quiet, dangerous kind of clarity. There's a moment in every woman's life when she stops asking, "Why me?" and starts asking, "What now?" That moment was coming. I could feel it like a storm building behind the horizon, waiting for the right crack to break the sky open. But not tonight. Tonight, I was still that gentle woman, polite, patient, loyal to a man who had long stopped deserving it. Karma doesn't rush. It watches. It waits. I turned off the kitchen light and let the darkness take the room. The air was cool, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays. From the living room, the clock ticked again, steady, merciless. Every tick felt like a heartbeat. Every beat felt like a countdown. I knew something had shifted inside me quietly, like a door creaking open somewhere deep in my soul. I didn't know where it led yet, but I knew I would walk through it. Before going to bed, I passed by the mirror again. I paused, studying the faint smear of red on my finger. The blood had dried. The cut was small, almost invisible now. I smiled, just a little. Maybe that's how pain works, loud when it happens, silent when it heals. When I lay down, the bed felt too big. Nathan's side was untouched, perfectly smooth, as if he had never been there at all. I turned toward it, placed my hand on the empty pillow, and whispered, "I hope she makes you happy. Not out of forgiveness. Not out of bitterness. Just a statement, clean. Final. Because deep down, I knew. What goes around, comes around. And when it does, I wouldn't need to lift a finger." As sleep began to take me, I heard the faint echo of that plate breaking again and again, somewhere in the back of my mind. But this time, it didn't sound like loss. It sounded like release. The kind of sound that marks an ending and quietly, the beginning of something else. If you enjoyed my story, you can leave a 1 in the comments. It lets me know these stories still mean something to you. And you, if you were in this person's place, what would you do? I'd truly love to hear your thoughts, so don't hesitate to share them below. I'm always curious to know what people feel, and I'd love to hear where you first came across this story or what made you stay until the end. And if stories like this one touch your heart, please like the video and subscribe to stay with me. There are many more stories waiting for you, stories where, perhaps, you might find a part of yourself. Morning arrived like a stranger who had forgotten my name. Soft light filtered through the curtains, washing the room in pale gold, but it brought no warmth. The pillow beside me was still untouched. Nathan hadn't come home. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the muted rhythm of cars outside. It was strange how silence could sound so loud once love had left the room. The world went on as if nothing had changed. But inside me, something had something small, quiet, irreversible. I made coffee, the way he liked it, 2 spoons of sugar, a dash of cream. Habit, not hope. Because even when love dies, habits linger like ghosts. The aroma filled the kitchen, and for a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. Then the phone buzzed again, a message from Clara. "You okay?" He posted pictures from Palm Springs. "Want me to come over?" I stared at the screen. Palm Springs again. That city had become a symbol of exclusion, of betrayal, of all the places I would never be invited to. "No," I typed back. "I'm fine." A lie so practiced, it slid off my fingers like truth. Clara knew me better than anyone. We met in college, back when I still believed hard work and kindness could fix anything. She had always been the one with sharp eyes, sharper words, the kind of woman who could smell deceit before it opened its mouth. She never liked Nathan. "Too smooth," she'd said after meeting him once. "Men like that collect hearts the way lawyers collect cases to win, not to keep." I should have listened. But I was in love, and love makes fools out of women who deserve crowns. By noon, the salon was quiet. It was a small space, tucked between a bakery and a bookstore, my sanctuary. The scent of shampoo and rose oil lingered in the air. Clients came and went, talking about weddings, promotions, vacations, lives that sounded so different from mine. I smiled, nodded, listened, but my mind wandered. It kept circling back to Nathan's last message, the way he said, "the family." The words replayed like a song stuck on the wrong note. Around 3, Clara showed up unannounced. Her eyes scanned my face the way a doctor checks for symptoms. "You didn't sleep," she said. It wasn't a question. I handed her coffee, trying to pretend everything was fine. But Clara wasn't the kind of woman you could lie to with a smile. She leaned back, arms crossed. "Elena, you've been disappearing for months. What's going on?" I hesitated. The truth felt heavy in my throat. "He's different," I said finally. "Colder, secretive, and I think there's someone else." Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. I told her about the texts, the trips, the late nights, the way his voice had lost warmth but gained irritation. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she said softly but firmly, "Check the house papers and your bank accounts. If he's really that kind of man, he won't just break your heart, he'll take what's yours." Her words hung in the air like smoke bitter, unavoidable. That evening, after closing the salon, I drove home with her warning echoing in my mind. Check the house papers. The house, my one inheritance, left by my father before he passed. The only thing in my name. I walked through the front door and looked around. The place still smelled faintly of his cologne, though he hadn't been here for days. Every framed picture felt like a performance smile staged for a camera that once believed in forever. I opened the study door. Nathan's desk was neat, too neat a man's way of hiding chaos under order. The safe was behind a row of law books. I knew the code. He had given it to me long ago, back when trust still meant something. The keypad beeped. The door clicked open. Inside, I found documents, bank statements, property titles, his business contracts. And then I saw it. My name, next to his, on a deed that looked wrong. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then I looked closer. The signature at the bottom mine was not mine. The strokes were careful, imitated, but not exact. I felt my stomach twist. He had forged my signature. He had turned our home into his asset. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The truth hit me not like a blow, but like a slow wave, stealing my breath inch by inch. I sank into his chair and stared at the papers, the black ink that spelled betrayal in legal form. How easy it was for love to become theft. How easy it was for trust to become a weapon. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone. Clara answered on the first ring. "I found it," I whispered. "He forged my name." Silence. Then her voice, steady, sharp as glass. "Listen carefully. Don't confront him yet. Copy everything, every document, every file. Send them to me, tonight." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Something in me shifted again the second crack after last night's plate. The soundless breaking of another illusion. I worked in silence, scanning papers, taking photos, labeling folders. Every click of the camera felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Proof of what I had endured. Proof of what I was no longer willing to ignore. At some point, I looked up and saw my reflection in the glass cabinet, the same woman, but not the same soul. Her eyes were clearer now, colder, determined. When everything was done, I sat in the dark study, surrounded by evidence of love's decay, of greed's mask. Nathan's voice echoed in my mind from months ago. "Marriage is about partnership, Elena. We're a team. A team. That's what we used to call ourselves." But somewhere along the way, he started keeping score, and I was the only one who didn't know the game had already ended. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the silence return. This time, it didn't hurt. It hummed low, steady, like the quiet moment before thunder splits the sky. The kind of silence that doesn't beg for peace. It prepares for war. That night, the house was dim and still, the reflection in the mirror almost unfamiliar. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore, just awake. Not raging, not trembling, just seeing. I traced the small scar on my finger, a thin line from the night I broke a plate trying to clean up too fast, too often. It had healed quietly, without my permission. Funny, how pain knows when to step aside to make room for something sharper. I thought of every yes I'd whispered while choking on a no. Every time I'd silenced myself to avoid the tremor in his voice. Every time I'd mistaken endurance for grace. They call it devotion, but I've learned that devotion, in the wrong hands, is just obedience dressed in poetry. Chains we clasp around our own wrists and call it love. By dawn, the truth had settled heavy, final, but clean. I hadn't slept. The divorce papers waited downstairs, next to an untouched dinner and an unlit candle. The evidence had always been there, ink on paper. Lies in plain sight. The first betrayal, I realized, isn't theirs. It's ours when we choose to believe the lie we want instead of the truth we fear. The morning unfolded like ritual. Coffee, mug, steam rising in ribbons. But this time, it wasn't for him. Each clink, each hiss, felt like punctuation to an ending, the house listening, approving. The first sip burned bitter on my tongue. Not the coffee, the knowledge. And knowledge, once swallowed, changes everything. Nothing sweet ever tastes the same again. By 10 o'clock, I was at Clara's office. Her desk was a battlefield of files and paperwork, but she cleared a space the moment she saw my face. "You brought everything?" she asked. I nodded and handed over the folder, years of blind trust pressed between sheets of legal print. Clara flipped through the documents, her eyes narrowing with every page. When she finally looked up, her voice was steady but low. "Elena, he didn't just forge your signature. He's been moving money quietly for months." The air left my chest. "To where?" She turned her monitor toward me. The name glowed against the screen like a scar that refused to fade. Vivian Reed. Vivian. The name struck like déjà vu. I'd heard it once, a passing mention over dinner. "An associate," he'd said. Just a colleague. Just a laugh that lingered too long in his mouth. Just a perfume that clung to his collar when he swore he'd been working late. So it was her. The shadow behind the missing weekends. The smile behind the lies. The woman who had everything I'd once believed was mine until I realized it never truly was. Clara kept talking about legal options, bank trails, subpoenas, but her voice blurred into a hum. All I could see was that name repeating in my mind like a curse. Vivian Reed. The woman who had walked into my life without knocking. When I left the office, the city felt sharper. People hurried past, the sky was painfully bright, and I wondered how everyone could move so easily when the ground beneath me had shifted. I walked without direction until I found myself in front of the boutique where Nathan's mother liked to shop. In the window, a necklace gleamed pearls arranged in perfect symmetry. Pearls. He once told me pearls reminded him of me. Simple, classic, quiet. Now I looked at them and thought of suffocation layers built from irritation, covering pain until it shines. I didn't go inside. I didn't need more illusions. That evening, back home, the air felt heavy again. Every object seemed to hold a memory I hadn't asked for. The couch where we watched movies, the hallway where he kissed my forehead, the mirror that had reflected so many lies. I poured wine, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop. The password was the same our anniversary date. How ironic. The date of our beginning became the key to the end. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through his folders. Client files, invoices, and then a hidden directory, simple name, personal. Oh. Inside were photos. Palm Springs, him and Vivian. Her hand on his shoulder, his smile unguarded. A private world, bright and cruel, captured by a careless lens. Each image was a blade, but by the fifth one, the pain dulled into clarity. Pain has a limit. Once you cross it, you stop bleeding, you start observing. I copied everything to a flash drive. My reflection in the black screen looked back at me. Calm, expressionless, almost foreign. This wasn't the face of a woman betrayed. This was the face of a woman documenting evidence. Later that night, Clara called again. "Did you find anything?" "Yes." I told her about the photos, the fake deed, the transfers. She sighed. "Then we do this smart. We build a case before he even suspects." "Clara," I said quietly, "do you ever wonder how someone can share a bed with you and still plan your ruin?" Her pause on the other end was long. "Then, because they mistake kindness for blindness. But they forget, light only looks soft until it burns." After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about every small warning I had ignored, the secretive smiles, the late-night messages, the scent of another woman's perfume clinging to his suit. I had convinced myself love meant patience. But patience, when misplaced, becomes permission. That realization settled into me like truth carved in stone. At midnight, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Headlights swept across the walls. Nathan was home. My heartbeat didn't quicken. It slowed, steady, deliberate. The door opened. Footsteps crossed the hall. He stopped when he saw me sitting there, calm in the lamplight. "Elena," he said, surprised. "You're up." "I couldn't sleep," I replied. My voice sounded foreign, even to me measured, quiet. He smiled, tired, rehearsed. "Work trip ran late. You know how it is." "Palm Springs again?" I asked. His eyes flickered just for a second, but enough. "I told you it was business." "Business with Vivian Reed?" Silence fell like ash. His jaw tightened. "Where did you hear that?" "Your files," I said. "Your photos. The forged signature on the deed." For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he laughed, short, sharp, defensive. "You went through my things. You went through my life." The words came out soft, almost tender, but they hit harder than a scream. He tried denial, then anger, then charm, all the faces he wore so easily. But none of them fit anymore. Because I wasn't the same woman who used to flinch at his temper or melt at his apologies. I watched him spin excuses, each one thinner than the last. When he realized I wasn't reacting, he fell silent. "What do you want, Elena?" he finally asked, voice low. "Nothing," I said, "just the truth." He looked away first. And in that small motion, I saw everything: guilt, fear, arrogance, and the dawning realization that I was no longer his audience. When he went upstairs, I stayed where I was, surrounded by the fragments of what used to be a marriage. The house felt cleaner somehow, stripped of illusion. The revelation had come not with shouting, but with clarity. And clarity is louder than rage. Hours later, as dawn approached, I stepped outside. The air was cool, smelling faintly of rain. For the first time in months, I felt weightless, not happy, Not sad, just unchained. I realized betrayal, when seen clearly, doesn't just break you. It frees you from the need to keep pretending. The universe does not hide truth forever. It lets deception bloom only long enough for you to recognize its shape. And when the petals fall, what remains is not pain, but the seed of awakening. I closed my eyes and breathed. Somewhere behind me, Nathan slept in the same house but a different world. Ahead of me waited a dawn that finally belonged to me. Morning broke without ceremony. No thunder, no light show, just the slow unveiling of gray sky over quiet streets. Nathan had already left. The smell of his cologne still floated in the hallway like the ghost of arrogance. I stood at the window, coffee in hand, and felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, just the stillness that comes when every illusion has burned itself out. I spent that day moving through the house like a curator, collecting evidence from a forgotten exhibit. Receipts, messages, contracts, each one a fossil of betrayal. I scanned, saved, labeled. Every click of the mouse was a heartbeat of resolve. Clara called at noon. "The case is solid," she said. "He won't see it coming." "I don't want revenge," I answered. "I just want closure." She paused. Closure is the most elegant revenge. When Nathan returned that evening, the house was spotless. Candles lit. Dinner served, an echo of the wife I used to be. He smiled, relieved. He mistook calm for surrender, as men often do. We ate in near silence. He talked about work, about deals, about a weekend conference. I nodded, memorizing every word that would later become proof. When he lifted his wine glass, I caught my own reflection in its dark surface. A woman watching herself vanish and be reborn in the same breath. That night, while he slept, I packed. Not clothes, not keepsakes, just documents, a flash drive, and the quiet dignity he thought he had taken from me. I left the ring on his pillow, the way one might leave payment for a debt finally settled. Beside it, a note written in steady ink. "You forged my name on paper." I reclaimed it in truth. Then I walked out, locking the door from the outside. The key clinked in my palm light. Final. The city was half awake, street lamps fading against dawn. I drove toward Clara's office, the sky slowly catching fire behind me. The radio played something soft, the kind of song that fills spaces too raw for words. Every mile between me and that house felt like another link breaking. Some wars end not with victory, but with silence. A silence so complete, it becomes power. When a woman stops begging to be understood and begins to act on her knowing, the world rearranges itself around her strength. By the time the sun rose, the papers were in Clara's hands, the legal process already in motion. I stepped outside the courthouse and inhaled deeply. For the first time in years, the air tasted like freedom, unflavored, undeniable. Behind me, the past unraveled quietly. Ahead, the universe waited wide, patient, fair. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and honest. Truth has no perfume, it just stands there, undeniable. Nathan sat across from me, his lawyer whispering in his ear. He looked smaller now, stripped of charm, of control, of the power he once wielded so effortlessly. The judge's voice echoed through the room, reading the verdict. Forgery, fraud, attempted misappropriation of marital property. Guilty. Each word landed like the sound of chains hitting the floor. Not on me, on him. Vivian couldn't meet my gaze. Her once perfect poise had wilted beneath the fluorescent courtroom light. The world had already turned her beauty into a headline, the woman who helped a married man steal from his wife. What had once shimmered as glamour now dripped as scandal. Affection had curdled into evidence. Behind Nathan, his family sat stiff and silent, their faces washed pale. No words left to defend him, no lies left to hide behind. Reputation, that fragile mask, crumbled right there, under the weight of everything they'd chosen not to see. When the gavel fell, I didn't smile. I simply rose. No triomphe. No applause. Just that quiet, steady peace that only truth can bring, heavy, cleansing, final. Days later, I sold the house. Not out of anger, but out of mercy for myself. I packed one suitcase, one passport, one heart finally free of negotiations. At the airport, dawn spilled across the glass in gold and rose, the kind of light that makes everything look forgiven. I watched it pour over the tarmac and whispered to no one in particular. No marriage ends because one person changes. It ends because someone grew too comfortable being forgiven. As the plane broke through the clouds, the world below became a soft blur: oceans, cities, memories dissolving into air. Singapore emerged beneath me, clean and bright, a city that seemed untouched by my past. No ghosts, no echoes, just space wide, open, waiting. For the first time in years, I had no plans. No promises to keep, no roles to perform. Just the quiet luxury of starting over, not as someone's wife or someone's mistake, but simply myself. I thought of it all. The lies, the courtroom, the silence, the nights that hollowed me out. And I understood. None of it had been wasted. Pain was not punishment. It was purification. Karma hadn't come to destroy me. It had come to restore balance. For every deceit Nathan had planted, truth had bloomed in its own time. For every tear I'd swallowed, grace had returned quietly, abundantly. The universe keeps its accounts, not in cruelty, but in symmetry. And as the plane descended into sunlight, I knew this much was true. Betrayal does not break a woman, it awakens her. It teaches her that love, without honesty, is only illusion. That peace is the most powerful kind of revenge, and that karma forgets no one. The cruel may win a few rounds, but integrity always wins the final game.